Welcome dear students. In this session we will be discussing with you the method of irrigation and water requirements of crops, Unit 3, course Water Resource Engineering, code 15CE52T, session 13, 5th semester of Civil Engineering program. In this session, what is the course outcome after studying this method of irrigation? The course outcome is you will be able to briefly explain furrow and sprinkler method of irrigation. Next, a small recap of the session 12 where we have studied about the surface irrigation and subsurface irrigation. Now in the surface irrigation, what is surface irrigation? It is a method of irrigation where water is either ponded on the soil or allowed to flow continuously over the soil surface for the duration of the irrigation. This is about surface irrigation. Now, what are the methods of surface irrigation? We have come across in the last session that is basin method, border strip method. In this session, we will be discussing about the concept of furrow method, which is other type of the surface irrigation. Now coming to the second one, which is subsurface method of irrigation. In subsurface method of irrigation, it is a method of irrigation in where the method of applying water to the fields below the ground surface, and water is supplied directly to the root zone of the plants is known as subsurface irrigation. Now in this method, what happens is moisture or the water reaches the plant roots through capillary action, hence subsurface irrigation. Now in the subsurface irrigation, it is again divided into two types, which is known as natural subsurface irrigation and artificial subsurface irrigation. What is natural subsurface irrigation? Natural subsurface irrigation is irrigation where water reaches below the land surface from the natural sources such as streams, pools, etc. This is about natural subsurface irrigation. Now coming to the artificial subsurface irrigation. In artificial subsurface irrigation, water is applied to the root zone of the crops through a network of perforated pipes and underground pipes. As the water passes under pressure, it comes out through perforations and percolates into soil near the root zone of the plants. This is about the artificial subsurface irrigation. Yes, artificial subsurface irrigation is a costly method. Natural surface irrigation is where the water is spreaded to the crops in terms of naturally. Now, in this session, I'll be discussing with the method of irrigation. That is already I have told you. It is a furrow method of irrigation, which is surface method of irrigation, and one more method is sprinkler irrigation. After studying these two concepts of the furrow method of irrigation and sprinkler method of irrigation, we will be able to answer these tests or the MCQs, which are nothing but multiple choice questions. Now going to further furrow irrigation. It is a irrigation technique where small channels having a continuous and almost uniform slope is provided. So what is the furrow irrigation? Is a irrigation where the small channels which are continuous and which are spread out, small channels having continuous and uniform slope is provided. Now in furrow irrigation, water which is flowing on the field channels is individually controlled, and furrow irrigation is suitable for row crops. Next, the length of the furrows may vary from 10 meters to 500 meters. How? When you take a field channel, there might be number of rows there might be 5 rows, 10 rows, depending upon the area of the field. It depends upon the area of the field, and the length may vary from 10 to 500 meters. Next, furrow method is the oldest system of irrigation. Since because no technology is adopted in this method, it's a method which is used all over the world, where the technology is not technology is not necessary, and the water availability is plenty. You can use the for irrigation method. It is suitable for crops such as potatoes, sugarcane, tobacco, maize, groundnut, cotton, jawar, etc. And there are many number of crops where you can use furrow irrigation method for cultivation. Next, in this pictorial representation, I'll be showing you how the flow of water is there from the field channel to the rows. At the head of the at the head of the field channel, there is a pipe which is laid of certain diameter. On the circumference of the pipe, what is there? There are holes which are impregnated, so that water oozes out from these holes. Now, when the water is supplied through the supply channel with a certain pressure, this water will be discharging out through the pipes or the impregnated holes which are present on the circumference of the pipe. Now this water is falling on the rows, which are all the rows are parallelly placed, and the water is falling, and the whole surface gets wetted up. And the most important concept which is to be noted here is it must have a uniform slope. If the slope is not provided, the water will not flow to the further length. Next, in the next pictorial representation, here there is no pipe placed at the supply channel or at the main channel. There is a water which is flowing in with certain pressure. Since it is an open one, the first row the first row is opened by the farmer or the labor. Is opened means the soil is open, and the water enters into this row. When the row is completely inundated with the water, this first row which is open is closed. Now no water is entering into the first row. Now similarly, second row is open, water is made to flow, and water gets inundated into the whole area or whole second row. And now when this whole row is completely inundated with the water, it is closed. Now consecutive rows are getting inundated by using this furrow irrigation. In the next slide, I'll be showing you a short video how the concept of the furrow irrigation takes place.
Irrigation. We have different modern techniques of irrigation. Let us learn about this one by one. Furrow irrigation. Water is allowed to enter the field through channels or furrows that are made between two rows of crops. Crops such as tomatoes, leafy vegetables, and grapes are grown using this method of irrigation.
Yes, I think this video will be helpful for you people to know the concept of the furrow irrigation, how it takes place. Now coming to the advantages of furrow irrigation technique. There are numerous advantages of furrow irrigation technique. Now we'll start with the first one. Large area can be irrigated at a time. See, in my pictorial representation, in the last slide I have shown you people. See, there's a large area which exists, and the whole area is completely inundated into the water. This is the advantage of furrow irrigation. Next, it saves labor, since once the furrow is filled, it is not necessary to give water a second time. In my video, when I played it, there was a single labor who was doing the who was doing the supply, who was doing the job of supplying water to the field. Only single labor. So since a single labor is used, hence we can come to a conclusion that It saves labor. Since once the furrow is filled, it is not necessary to give water a second time. What does it mean? See, if the water which is made to flow in the irrigation channel is completely inundated in the all the rows if they are completely inundated, there is not necessary to give the irrigation to give the water for the second time. Yes, we have to give the water second time, third time, but the gap period it will be more, so that it will be helpful for the farmer to do his other jobs also. Next, third advantage, it is reasonably cheaper method. Since no technology is involved in this method of irrigation, hence it is a cheaper method, and no electricity is used. Electricity is used only for this, only to pump the water. Other than that, water is flowing in the form of uniformly, or water is flowing uniformly in terms of gravity itself from high altitude to lower altitude. Now coming to the fourth advantage, plants get proper quantity of water by this system. Yes, if the plants get proper quantity of water, what happens is the growth or the yield of the crop will be more. Yes, this is the advantage of furrow method of irrigation. In the next slide, yeah, this was until last concept it was about the furrow irrigation method. In this concept we will be studying the sprinkler irrigation method. Yeah, before going to the points, I want to just review. Sprinkle means water is sprayed to the field in terms of sprinkle, and there is a small technology involved in this system. Now coming to the point, in the first point, in the sprinkler irrigation method, water is applied to the crops in the form of sprinkle. Yeah, that's what I told you. Water is applied. How the water is applied? Water is applied to the crops in the form of sprinkler system, sprinkle. But in terms of furrow, it was not like this. Water was applied in the form of flooding. Water was flowing in the form of flooding. Here water is flowing in terms of sprinklers. Now in this sprinkler there is a technology adapted how to use the sprinkler, how to use this method. Now it has a pumping unit, main line is there, sublines are there, control valves are placed at every subline of the sprinkler irrigation method, and a rising main are there, and a sprinkler revolving head is mounted on the sprinkler revolving head is mounted. Now what happens? How will cultivate the crops, or how will we irrigate the land? That we'll be discussing. The water comes out through the revolving sprinkler heads with force. When sprinkler heads are not provided, perforations are made in the pipes, and they are provided with nozzles through which water jets falls on the ground. The next point, yeah, this is a pictorial representation of the rising main, where the water is flowing, water is sprayed to the irrigation field in terms of sprinkler, which is in the form of circulated system. Now I'll show a small video regarding the explanation about the sprinkler system.
Sprinkler irrigation. The water is dispersed through sprinklers, which have perpendicular pipes with rotating nozzles on top. The pipes are joined to the main pipeline at regular intervals. When water is pumped through the main pipe, under pressure, it escapes out from the rotating nozzles in the form of...
Yes, this was about the video on sprinkler irrigation system. Now I'll explain you the system, how the system runs is. There's a source where water is there. Water is pumped to a certain pressure by the bypass valve. The water is flowing to the pressure. There's a filter unit before the water is entering the main lines and the subline. What is the function of this filter? Water is filtered because the groundwater or the subsurface water which is pumped through the pump, there will be having some impurities present in the water. We have to remove that impurities by providing a filter media, and the filtered water will be passed to the main lines and the sub main lines. Now after the water is filtered, it is flowing to the main line and sub main line. At the entry portion of the sub main line, there will be a control valves which are present at the entry portion of the sub main lines. What is the function of this control valve? The function of the control valve is it helps the sub main lines whether to operate or not to operate. Means whether you want to, if you want that particular area, that particular length of the sub main line to flow the water, you have to open it, otherwise you can shut it down. And also one more function of this, there's one more function of this control valve. If the pressure of the water is less, what happens, you cannot irrigate, you cannot on all the control valves, since the water is flowing in terms of rising head, and there must be enough pressure so that water gets revolved, so that water oozes out from the sprinkler heads or revolving sprinkler heads. So now if the sublines are more and the water pressure is less, we'll try to shut off some of the control valves so that will increase the pressure in the remaining of the sub main lines. Now watering is being done. Now when the water is passed or when the control valve is open, the water enters to the sub main line, control valve is open, and water enters into this rising pipe, and through the revolving heads the water is sprinkled and the irrigation is being done. This is about the sprinkler irrigation system. Now coming to the advantages of sprinkler irrigation system. First one, seepage losses which occur in urban channels of surface irrigation method are completely eliminated. Completely eliminated in the sense there is no water which is wasted or infiltrated into the earth. The water which is sprayed or sprinkled on the crops are absorbed by the root zone of the crops. No water is infiltrated. This is the advantage. First advantage. Second one, no cultivation area is lost of making ditches. As in case of for irrigation, there was a row where we have to make the water to get flooded into it or flow into it, and there is another row where the crops are grown. Hence, in this method of irrigation, no such arrangements are required. You can use the whole area for the cultivation of the crops. Third one, in sprinkler system of irrigation, water is to be applied at a rate lesser than infiltration capacity of the soil and thus avoiding surface run. So what is surface run? If the water is more, the roots will absorb whatever the water needed for it, and extra or the surplus water will be run off. But in terms of sprinkler irrigation, it will not happen. The water, whichever the water is sprayed on the crop in the irrigation field, all the water will be absorbed by the root zone. Hence the surface runoff is reduced. Next, fourth one, this method leaches down salts and prevents waterlogging or salinity. Since no water is flooded, there will be no salts present on the field channels, and since no flooding is there, waterlogging is reduced. Next, it is less labor oriented and hence useful where labor is costly and scarce. See, this system is having completely it's a technology based. Once the only thing we have to do is we have to fix the system. We have to fix the system properly, and we have to take care of the sub main lines. Just only thing, during the watering of the crops, we have to just check about the revolving sprinkler heads, whether they are working or not. If they are not working, you have to replace it. That's it. There is no labor required for this one. Next advantage is up to 80% efficiency can be achieved. That is, up to 80% of water can be stored in the root zone of the crops. See, since no water gets infiltrated into the deep percolation of the soil, so the efficiency they will be definitely achieved by the root zone of the plants. Hence, this is about the advantages of the sprinkler irrigation. Now coming to the limitations or disadvantages of the sprinkler irrigation are enumerated below. First one, high winds may distort sprinkler pattern, causing non-uniform spreading of water on the crops. See what happens when there is a high wind in the irrigation field, there might be a chances of disturbing the pattern of the sprinkler. Since the sprinkler is in circular shape, if the winds are there, there might be chances of disturbing the pattern of the sprinkler. Hence, if this happens, what happens to the sprinkler irrigation? It causes non-uniform spreading of water to the crops. Hence, it affects the yield of the crop. Next limitation. In areas of high pressure and high wind velocity, considerable evaporation losses of water may take place. If the temperature is more, however, we are sprinkling the water which is sprinkled on the field channels or on the crops, before getting infiltrated or absorbed by the root zone of the plants, due to the temperature rise, this water will get evaporated, and hence there are many losses of the evaporation. Next, third one, limitation. They are not suited to crops requiring frequent and larger depth of irrigation, such as paddy. Yeah, paddy is a crop where it requires where the water requirement of crop is around 1200 mm of water is required. This will not give that much. This system will not provide that much quantity or the quantity of the water which is required for that particular crop, this particular crop to grow. Hence, it is not suited for the crops where the crops which requires more quantity of water. This method is not suitable, or this is the disadvantages of the sprinkler irrigation. Now, fourth one, the initial cost of the system is very high. Since there are and the system requires a high technical skill. See, I have already shown you in my image that there's a lot of arrangements are made. Pump is there, filter unit is there, main line, sub line, control valve, rising main, revolving sprinkler heads. It's a completely technology based system, hence the initial cost is high. Now, fifth one, it requires a large electrical power. Yeah, to pump the water, we need electrical power. To pump the water to the main line, we need power. Sub-main line, we need power. To pump the water to the rising head, we need power, and to sprinkle also we need the power. Hence, large electrical power is required. Hence, this is the limitations of the sprinkler irrigation. Now, coming to sixth one, heavy soil with poor intake cannot be irrigated. Heavy soil in the sense the soil which doesn't have good infiltration capacity cannot be irrigated efficiently. This is the limitations of the sprinkler irrigation method. Now, after studying these two concepts, now we'll start explaining or start solving some MCQs on these concepts. First one, in furrow irrigation technique, dash are dug between crop rows in a field. What are the options we are given for us? A, trenches, pits, basins. D, none of the above. Think after learning the concept of the irrigation, furrow irrigation, if people will be definitely able to answer this question. Since it is a furrow irrigation technique, how this technique goes? Technique goes by digging up the, I'll show you. Yes, trenches. Yeah, there are this technique. In this technique, trenches are dug between the rows in the irrigation field. So solution is A. Next one, next MCQ. Furrow irrigation technique is suitable for dash crops in a field. Yeah, already we have explained what are the options given here. Free flooding, perennial, row crops, mixed crops. Now, what might be the answer? Free flooding, perennial, row, mixed. The answer will be, I'll show in the next slide. It is row crops. Yeah, row crops. It is C. Option is C. For irrigation, for row. The name itself indicates that it is a row method of the row method where row technique is adopted for cultivation of the crops. Now coming to the next one, advantage of furrow irrigation. There are numerous advantages I explained to you. Now coming to the options, saves labor, wide flooding, control flooding, free flooding. Yes, what is the advantage from this? It saves labor. Yes, it saves labor. By using furrow irrigation technique, you can save the labor. In my video also I have shown you that only a single labor was doing the furrow irrigation technique. Next one, in sprinkler technique of irrigation, water is applied in the form of how water is applied. Options given are wild flooding, sprinkler, control flooding, trickle. Now the correct one will be yes, since the water is sprinkled, it's a B1. Yeah, sprinkler irrigation technique, water is applied in the form of sprinklers. Right. Next, the advantage of sprinkler irrigation is, we are studying numerous advantages of the sprinkler irrigation. Now what are the options given here? Less seepage loss, loss of water, large electrical power, less storage. What will be the advantage? Yes, it's less seepage loss. Option is A. Now next one, limitations of sprinkler irrigation. What is the limitation of sprinkler irrigation which are given in options here is high initial cost, less labor required, 80% efficiency, more water required. What is the limitation we have studied in our limitations? This was the what is the limitation? Yeah, it's first one, which is high initial cost. Since it requires much technology is adapted in arrangement of the sprinkler irrigation, hence the limitation is high initial cost. Yes, thank you dear students. Thank you.